Hi all BCA students, welcome back to once again our series of Excel activities. We are fortunately nearing the end of the course now. Today's topic is lesson 8 and it's going to be pivot tables and pivot charts. I'm going to work slowly today so that we have a good idea of what we are working with. Let's first take a look at where the activity is, and as usual it's under content, homepage content, Microsoft Excel practical tasks, and we have pivot tables and charts. Our final activity next week is going to be what ifs and goal seeking, but for today, this week, we are looking at pivot tables and charts. Please be aware we're speaking of two items here, a pivot table and a pivot chart. So we would go in there. We have a YouTube video of learning pivot tables in 6 minutes as a background with off YouTube that you can welcome to have a look at to give you a basic idea of what a pivot table is. There are a few videos here for you to watch. I think start with my video and we move on from there. This is exercise or lecture 8. Let's take a look at it. First thing I'm going to do is take a look at the instructions before we open the starter file. And what we're going to be doing today is a pivot table together with a pivot chart. So please be aware we are looking at two components, and we are looking at the basics of pivot tables and pivot charts. We are not moving into the advanced aspect of it. You will be doing that second year in AIS. You will find yourself making quite a few of these pivot tables and pivot charts against different data. I think the first thing we need to have a look at is what is a pivot table. Well, we know what a table is. Let's take a quick look at a simple table. So I'm going to open the starter file and jump back to the definition. Here is the table that we are going to be working with today, and it is a simple table of cacti with our name of plant, our type of plant, is it indoor and outdoor, what is its growth season, propagation, cost per plant. We have quite a lot of information here that we can have a look at, and we can even think of this as our database. Even though it's not Access, it is a type of flat file database where we can look at all of the information. But now I might not wish to have all of this information displayed at once, and that is where a pivot table comes into the picture. Let's go back to the definition. It is a summarization tool or a data summarization tool. We can summarize, sort, reorganize, group, count, give totals, give averages of data stored in a table. They call it here a database, but it's basically a table. And we can swap between columns and rows. Now that is quite a mouthful, students. There is a lot of things we can do here. Today we're going to be doing a basic pivot table, but the definition explains of what you can do. So what we would do is we would take our table, if we want, when we use our pivot table, and I can select here only the name of plant, the growth season, and the cost per plant. And I'm going to show you a little trick at the moment which I will undo afterwards. But name of plant, I can right click here and hide the column, indoor, outdoor, or both. I can right click and I can hide the growth season, and I can hide the propagation. That is one way of looking at the table to shorten it and simplify it and say, okay, well those are the three things that I would like to see, and we can hide our columns and do it that way. But what I would prefer to do is to be more advanced and create what we call a pivot table. I'm going to close this so that I have not made any mistakes, and I will open it again just now. It's called a pivot table because it allows you to rotate the data summary, and you may look at it from different angles and perspectives. You can look at it as in terms of rows and columns. You can look at it in terms of specific rows or specific columns. You can group items, and you can nest items. So I think when they talk about rotate the data summary, they only don't let that confuse you. They're just saying we can take a different look at the specific data that is in the table. I know I'm spending a bit of time on the introduction, but I would not like the pivot table to confuse you, because we can move to an advanced level with the pivot table. However, we are first year and we are creating a basic pivot table. You will move on to creating advanced pivot tables in the second year. So during the first year, we are just doing an introduction to what this pivot table is. I'm going to open Google, and I'm going to have a look at what their definition of a pivot table is. We just do a quick search here. And we have a definition here of a pivot table. It's a table of statistics that once again summarizes the data. So when we speak of a pivot table, it is a summary. And it can be sums, averages, other statistics, rows, columns that we actually choose ourselves. So I think the key word behind pivot tables is that they are summaries. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump right to the end to our solution to show you what a pivot table looks like and what a pivot table does. So I'm actually opening the answer here. So when you are finished with activity 8, you will have something that looks like this. You will have two spreadsheets. You will have your table of data that we start working with, which contains all of the information, and we can call that our database if you like. And then we have here our pivot table and a pivot chart. Now, one of the nice things about a pivot table is it really puts in what we call filters at the top. So I can take away everything and I can say I only want to see the information on a pencil cactus. And there we go. It's only showing me the information on a pencil cactus. Obviously my chart is going to show only one thing, but I can see that it is an outdoor plant, that it costs $3.50, and my grand total of prices is $3.50. I can include a wallpaper. Let's have a look if that's not an outdoor plant, it's an indoor plant, so it's not showing it to me. I can move here to my answers and I can choose here both indoor and outdoor, or I can select all. And there we have find our wallpaper, which is actually an indoor plant. And it's giving us the sum of the cost per the plant in a chart. I can go to my table, I can choose select all, and it's going to show me all of the different plants. And a summary of that. If you notice, I've got some blanks in here. I've actually gone and damaged it now. So I would go to my pivot table design, I would go to my report layout, and I would show it in outline form, which is already showing. So what I would need to do is undo there for now, rather than get confused. Students, what you are looking at here, if we include the pivot table and the pivot chart, is I think what we would call a dashboard. And a dashboard is the same as you get a dashboard in a car, where it shows you all the different things such as your engine temperature, how much fuel you have in the car, what gear you're in, the speed you're going, the speed of the engine. So does a dashboard show you in Excel. a whole lot of different aspects of data. So we can call this a dashboard once we have finished with it. I'm going to go back to my questions. We've had a look at the definition of what is a pivot table and why is it called a pivot table, because we can customize it completely. And we're doing a simple version so that you don't get confused. Let's move on to the instructions. I am not going to do the entire activity. I am going to do a similar activity using the starter file to give you an idea of how these pivot tables and pivot charts work. And if we move down, we are interested in the name of the plant, whether it's indoor, outdoor, and just the cost per plant. I'm not interested in propagation, I'm not interested in growth season, and I'm not interested in type of plant, as we hit it earlier on. So let's take a look at our starter file, which I'm going to open. And in there we have our basic table, which we are going to turn into a pivot table and a pivot chart. Step number 1, if you have a look, I only have one worksheet here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight all of my information. And that goes from A1 to F25. So I've highlighted absolutely everything here that I wish to work with. I go to Insert, Pivot Chart, which is in the middle of your ribbon. And I'm not going to choose just pivot chart. I'm interested in a pivot chart and a pivot table. So we are inserting two things. And there it is. It says it graphically summarizes your data again. So I think the key word that we're working with this lesson is that a pivot table and a pivot chart is a summary of a greater amount of information. I click on Insert. It says Create Pivot Table. The range I've already put in there. It's in the CBS Culture worksheet. If you notice that it's absolute. And I would like this in a new worksheet. And it is already ticked there, so I'm going to tell it OK. And I get two items here. I get my pivot table and I get my pivot chart. And I get on the right hand side here a menu that I can't make larger, but you will see how it works quite easily, as I only have 4 fields here. I have filters, my legend, my series that can turn to column depending on what I'm working on, my axis, and my values. Let's have a look at how these work. Moving back to the question paper, I am interested in name of plant, indoor, outdoor, and cost per plant. So what I'm going to do is I am going to drag the name of plant into my axis. And you will see it shows up in my table on the left hand side. I am going to drag down whether it is indoor, outdoor, or both. And it appears underneath there. We're going to change that layout soon. And then finally I would like under values, and if you will have a look here, it says there the sum of the cost per plant. I have not added any filters today. I will add one later to demonstrate. And the legend series we can have a look at. The legend is that section of the chart that is telling you what you are looking at in terms of the information. Now, if you notice, it's put everything below each other, and that's not very useful to us. So if I've clicked on my pivot table, I want you to have a look at the top of the screen here. If I click on the table, I get my pivot table tools. If I click on my chart, I get my pivot chart tools. Well, I'm working with a table, so I'm going to click on the pivot table tools, and I'm going to change to design, So the table tools will only show up once you've clicked on the table. And I'm going to go to the report layout, and there are several layouts that we can use. The one I'm interested in today is outline form for our activity. And if you have a look, it changes with my rows nicely next door to each other. I'm not interested in both indoor and outdoor plants. I am interested in what? Let's take a look at this, and we are interested in our outdoor plants only. So what we would do is I may use my filter here, take away everything and select only outdoor, and my outdoor plants are going to show. And if you have a look, correspondingly my table changes. My table has a bit of a mess in here. Excel has not done a very good job, so we're going to look at formatting tables in the next lesson, but I will format this one. If we have a look at our question paper, we would actually like what they call a pie chart, and this is a 3D pie chart. So I have my basic information here. I think I need to change this to currency with 2 decimal places. So I simply, as we do, format cells. I'm choosing currency with 2 decimal places. There we go. Then my currency shows up in my chart. So these two are interrelated. They are tied together, and the chart is showing me whatever is in my table. And in my table we've got our name of plant, indoor, outdoor. We've chosen outdoor only using the filter feature, and the sum of the cost per plant, which is here at the bottom, 2,650 Rand, which is the sum of the costs of all of the plants. I'm now going to click on my table, and I have my pivot chart tools. No longer my pivot table tools, my pivot chart tools. And I'm going to go to design, and I'm going to click on here near the end, change the chart type. And I'm going to choose pie, and I'm going to choose here 3D pie, which looks like what we want in the question paper. I am just checking here because you will have menus that you can click on here. We are only looking at the outdoor plants. I can also have options for format chart area, but wait for the next lesson for that. So we've got our pivot chart fields here as we would like them. I can add a filter that is type of plant. So I am now moving beyond the exercise. I simply drag it in there, and you will see your filter appears at the top. The type of plant is all. I can choose only bonsai, and it will tell me there is 2 bonsai plants, and it's going to change my chart accordingly and give me the names of those. Should you wish to remove your filter, so you could look at bonsai, we could say we want to look at cacti as well, so I would choose OK, and then it's going to show me my cacti in there together with the bonsai. They're both outdoor plants, and you can play around with the filter, adding what you would like to add. Should you not wish any of these fields that we have dragged to the areas below, you may just click on it and go remove field, and then we are back where we started. Students, I think the important thing is to understand and know what is in your chart and what you are looking for before you attempt to insert a pivot table. So there is a certain amount of logic behind what we are doing. We can't just insert random things. You would want to know what does my table look like, what information does it contain, and what are we looking for. And in our case, we were looking for the name of the plant, whether it was indoor and outdoor, and we chose outdoor, and we were interested in the cost. We were not interested in the other information, which is why we chose to insert a pivot chart, which is a summary of the greater chart that we are looking at here. I am going to rename this. It is in the activity to CBS dash pivot. So my chart is on its new table. There is my original information, and here is my summary of that information. Should I wish to modify my chart, I can click on that and use my pivot chart tools. You can also use additional tools on the right hand side should you wish to, but we generally work with design and format. If I click on the table, I get my pivot table tools. So what we have done in today's lesson is created a basic pivot table and a basic pivot chart. Let me show you one more example before we finish the lesson and you attempt this. I'm going to close this, and I am not going to save my starter file. I'm going to save my open my starter file again. And here is my information. We would highlight, and let's say we are interested in different information this time. I want the name of the plant, the type of the plant, and the growth season. So name of plant, type of plant, growth season. Let's insert a pivot table that will look at only those items. Name, type, growth. I would choose here insert, pivot chart and table, because I would like both. I want it on a new worksheet. And it is blank. You may click on your pivot table, and I said we wanted in our rows the name of the plant. Let's choose growth season and the propagation. And if you have a look, it's just nesting it under each other on the left hand side here. That's not particularly useful to me because it becomes a very large chart. I would also like the total of the cost per plant, so I grab that in there. If you have a look, Excel has again made a bit of a mess of the chart. We would need to fix that up. First thing I would like to do is I want this information next to each other. So I click on my pivot table, I go to my pivot table tools, and I would like a report layout in outline form. And there we go, the information is a little bit more legible. Let me highlight my amounts. We have the full list at the moment, and I'm going to change that to currency because that is what we are looking at. Format cells, currency, 2 decimal places is adequate, and it actually changes it on the chart there. I am only interested in the growth season of, let's say, summer. So I'm going to remove select all, and I'm going to choose here summer. And I actually only have 3 plants that grow during summer, and my table is giving me a summary of that. And I also have the grand total of the sum of the cost per plant. And it says there, sum of cost per plant. I could do different things. I could be counting the amount of plants that I have. It would be sum of the description of the plant. But I'm not doing that for today. I'm sticking with the activity. Should I wish to change my table, at the moment I'm on the pivot chart tools because I clicked on the pivot sorry, I am actually on the table. You click on the pivot table tools or your pivot chart tools. I'm going to go to design. I'm going to go, you have all your different types of designs here, but let's change the chart type first to a pie, and I would like a 3D pie of that. And the growth season, if you have a look here, is only summer. I can change it either on the pivot table or on the pivot chart. They are interrelated. Let's take a look at spring and autumn. Say a customer comes to you and they would like a plant that they want to buy that will grow in spring and autumn. You can use the pivot table to select just those in order to sell them the correct type of plant. Students, what you need to do is you need to practice this, and what I would do first is, before you attempt the activity of inserting the pivot table and starting to drag your items through here, open the starter file, highlight your entire range, and just drag different items into your axis categories. Remember to go to your pivot chart tools, go to your design. Let me double click on this, pivot table tools, my apologies. We go to our design and we go to our report layout, and for these activities use only outline form because it lays out the data nicely next to each other. And you can experiment with the different fields that we would like to see. Should I like to remove propagation from this field, I can simply click on it and go remove field, and propagation is removed from both the pivot table and the pivot chart. And what we are looking at here is what I called a dashboard. We could bring more information in from another chart and another table and make our dashboard more and more complicated. So this is activity number 8. It is lecture number 8, and it's going to take a bit of practice. It is not complicated. It is purely based on what you would like to see from your entire table. We would like to summarize this table, and to do so we are going to use a pivot table which we insert. I hope this video has been of help for you students, and I would like you to attempt activity number 8. It may take several attempts to become familiar with what we are doing, but please recall that we are summarizing the data. I hope you have a good day, and we are nearly at the end of the course, and our next topic will be goal seek, and then we are finished with the course. We can move into revision. Thank you for watching.